A police officer stumbles upon an abandoned German shepherd shivering in the snow, guarding a pink backpack like his life depends on it. What's hidden inside will break your heart and reveal the unimaginable pain one child endured. Discover how the loyalty and courage of a German shepherd unlock a community's darkest secrets and inspire hope when all seems lost. Love incredible German shepherd stories and emotional rescues. Subscribe now for more true tales of courage, healing, and second chances every week. The sun had barely touched the horizon when Officer Elena Ellie Parker's SUV rolled to a stop along a snowbound Colorado highway, the icy wind slicing through the dawn. Her headlights cut a path through the swirling flakes, illuminating a sight that froze her breath. Just ahead, a large German shepherd, matted fur caked with blood and ice, stood rigid in the middle of the road. Even as she approached, the dog refused to move, his amber eyes locked onto her, filled with something far too human, pain, and a fierce kind of loyalty. At his feet was a child's backpack, pink, torn, spattered with mud and something darker. The dog stood over it like a soldier at post, trembling but defiant, a strip of silver duct tape still twisted around his flank. Ellie's pulse spiked. In her 10 years on the force, she'd never seen a dog behave like this, especially not one clearly battered, as if he'd survived a war. She called out softly, but the shepherd only braced himself, refusing to leave the backpack even as the wind whipped snow against his face. Ellie's heart squeezed. She saw it then. The dog wasn't just hurt. He was guarding, protecting. His gaze flickered down to the backpack, then back to Ellie, silently pleading. Ellie's gloved hands trembled as she crouched, lowering herself to the dog's level. The air between them was sharp with fear and memory, her own memories, never far from the surface, of another child lost, another winter day, another helplessness she could never forgive herself for. She spoke gently, voice catching. "Hey, buddy, I'm not gonna hurt you. Let's see what you're protecting." The shepherd whined, limping as he shifted, but didn't back away. Ellie slowly reached for the backpack, her fingers brushing over a glittery unicorn patch barely clinging to the fabric. She unzipped it, praying for a miracle, and found a small, battered journal, pages covered in shaky handwriting and the frantic drawings of a child. As she flipped through, one entry in red crayon sent a chill down her spine. "If you find this, please help me. Ranger's my only friend. He'll show you where I am." A name, scrawled in big looping letters, Laney. Ellie glanced at the dog. "So that's your name," she thought, looking into his eyes. "Ranger," she read on. More drawings, dark shapes looming, a sad stick-figure girl clutching a dog. The words, "The bad man hurts us. Don't let him take Ranger." A cold wave of dread broke over Ellie. Was the child out there, still alive? What had happened to her? And why had this dog suffered to protect her secrets? She reached for her radio, debating. Protocol said to wait for backup, but her gut screamed at her to act now. She couldn't leave, not when a child's life might hang in the balance. As if sensing her resolve, Ranger allowed her to gently peel the duct tape away, flinching but refusing to leave the backpack. In that moment, a fragile trust sparked, a silent pact between two wounded souls. Ellie wrapped the trembling dog in her coat, her mind whirling. She radioed in a possible child endangerment, evidence at scene, but left out the fear curling in her gut. She could feel the clock ticking. The mystery pressed in on all sides. Who was Laney, and what darkness had she and Ranger survived together? A gust of wind whipped the snow across the road, obscuring everything. Ellie hugged Ranger closer, promising herself and this battered animal that she wouldn't let them down, not this time. Somewhere in the distance, a siren began to wail, echoing off the mountains. Ellie stayed with Ranger, heart pounding, eyes fixed on the blood-stained backpack that held far more than just a child's secrets. It held hope, fragile, flickering, but alive. And as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, illuminating the snow with a pale, golden light, Ellie made her decision. She wouldn't wait for orders. She would follow where Ranger led. Because sometimes, the ones most broken are the only ones brave enough to save what's left. Mid-morning, the animal clinic's neon sign buzzed weakly against the gray sky as Officer Ellie Parker rushed through the door, cradling Ranger against her chest. The heat inside felt stifling after the raw Colorado cold. Snow still clung to Ellie's boots and melted across the battered tiles, each step echoing a tension that crackled in the air. Dr. Marlene Greaves, compact, iron-haired, no-nonsense, met them with a glance that took in everything: the duct tape, the pink backpack still pressed to Ranger's side, the blood matting his fur. Without a word, she gestured Ellie into the back, already scrubbing in. The clinic was empty but for the thrum of machinery and the faint, anxious pant of the wounded shepherd. Ellie set Ranger down gently. The dog tried to stand, legs shaking, but collapsed in front of the backpack, chin resting atop it as if daring the world to try and take it away. Dr. Greaves knelt, hands sure and gentle. "You got guts, boy," she murmured, slipping the stethoscope beneath the matted fur. "But you're holding on by a thread." Ranger's growl, deep in his chest, vibrated through the cold metal table when Dr. Greaves's assistant reached for the backpack. "It's okay," Ellie soothed. "Let's just let him keep it close." The vet nodded. Her years had taught her that sometimes what a patient clung to mattered as much as what they'd lost. As the exam unfolded, the damage became heartbreakingly clear. Fresh wounds, bites and bruises, but older scars too, scars that told a longer story of pain. Dr. Greaves probed gently, voice softening. "He's been hurt before, not just once, not just now." Ellie blinked hard. "He was duct-taped, and he led me to this." She showed the pink backpack, opening it to reveal the battered journal inside. "A girl named Lainey. She wrote about someone hurting her. She calls him Ranger, her only friend. Says he'll show us where she is." "Doctor." Greaves's face darkened, and she motioned for Ellie to help scan Ranger for a microchip. The beep of the scanner was a brief relief, until the computer returned nothing. "No registration. Someone's hiding him on purpose," the vet said, voice low. Ranger's eyes flicked from Ellie to the door, restless. He barely flinched at the needle or the bandages, only baring his teeth when anyone got too close to the backpack. Dr. Greaves chuckled sadly. He'd protect that bag with his life. Ellie understood. The objects left behind by the missing always took on a kind of power. She remembered clearing her own child's room, every toy and sock suddenly sacred, unbearable to move. While the vet worked, Ellie sat in the corner, journal open, letting the weight of Lainey's words sink in. Each entry was a cry for help disguised as a bedtime story. Scribbled hearts next to Ranger's name, a drawing of the bad man with blacked-out eyes. Lainey wrote, "He hates Ranger. He says dogs don't feel." But Ranger knows. He always knows. Ellie's chest tightened. She couldn't help but see echoes of herself and her lost daughter, grief and hope locked in every line. As Ranger drifted into uneasy sleep, the door swung open and Rachel appeared, drawn by the word around town that a cop and a dog were making trouble at the vet's. Rachel, retired school counselor, knew the signs of trauma, human or animal. She crouched beside Ellie, voice low. "You ever see a dog so devoted?" Ellie shook her head, but Rachel's hand landed warm on her arm. "Sometimes the most broken creatures find each other." Suddenly, Dr. Greaves's assistant bustled in, worry in his eyes. "There's talk outside. Someone's asking about the dog. Says he's dangerous. Says there's a reward." The air sharpened. Ellie's jaw clenched. "That's no coincidence. The abuser knows we're close." Rachel stood, scanning the room. "You have to be careful, Ellie. Folks around here. Some look the other way. Some are afraid of what'll come out, if the truth does." Ellie looked at Ranger, whose ears perked up, eyes wide and intent despite exhaustion. She recognized that look. A sentinel's focus, a survivor's readiness. "He's waiting," Ellie whispered. "He's not done protecting Lainey. There's more." Outside, snow began to fall harder, swirling against the clinic windows, a reminder that time was running out. The next hour was a blur. Ellie sent the journal pages to the police station, filed an initial missing child report, and tried to hide her nerves as she fielded calls, most supportive, some not. The town's rumor mill spun. Whispers of the bad man filtered in. Derek Morrison, a familiar name, a history of slick legal maneuvers, always escaping consequence. People muttered about failed system checks, how nothing ever stuck, how victims kept disappearing or recanting. But now they had Ranger, they had the backpack, they had Laney's words. As Dr. Greaves finished the last stitches and Ranger's eyes fluttered open, Ellie leaned in close. "You ready to help us, buddy?" she whispered. Ranger nosed the backpack and, for the first time, allowed someone besides Ellie to stroke his head. The walls between dog and human began to crack, just a sliver of hope shining through. With the vet's blessing, Ellie bundled Ranger up again, tucking the pink backpack under his chin. As she turned to leave, Rachel stopped her. "You're going to need help. Don't try to do this alone, Ellie. That dog will show you, but you need to trust people too, even after everything." Outside, the wind howled, but Ellie's resolve only sharpened. Ranger wasn't the only one refusing to give up. The fight for Laney, and for whatever justice remained in this small town, was only just beginning. With Ranger pressed against her leg, backpack clutched like a lifeline, Ellie stepped out into the blizzard, heart pounding with questions and the faintest flicker of hope. The afternoon sun filtered through the frosted windows of Ellie's house, casting long, faded beams across the worn hardwood floors. The rooms, once filled with laughter and chaos, now held a kind of careful stillness, a museum of memories Ellie didn't know how to clear away. Pictures of her lost daughter still hung above the mantel, untouched. A single pink slipper rested by the door, the matching one packed away years ago. Ranger, still groggy from sedation and pain meds, paced anxiously from room to room, nose pressed to every unfamiliar corner, the pink backpack never more than a paw's reach away. Ellie watched him from the kitchen doorway, arms folded, her police jacket hanging heavy on her frame. She couldn't miss the way Ranger moved, alert, nervous, refusing the food she placed on the mat, every muscle taut with old fear. When the heater kicked on with a low clank, Ranger jerked his head up, eyes wild, only settling again when he could curl around the backpack and nudge it close to his chest. The house felt even lonelier than usual. Ellie's own grief had carved deep hollows inside her, spaces she kept hidden, even from herself. But the sight of Ranger guarding Laney's backpack, as if it contained the girl herself, pressed at wounds she thought had long scarred over. A knock at the door startled them both. Ranger shot to his feet, body stiff, hackles raised. Ellie shushed him, heart thumping, and opened the door to find Rachel, her neighbor, and these days, the closest thing to a friend she allowed herself. Rachel wore a puffy green jacket and a gentle smile, her gray curls haloed by the cold. She held a tin of lemon bars in one hand and a book in the other. "I figured you might need company," Rachel said quietly, slipping inside before Ellie could protest. "And I heard about what happened at the clinic." Ranger circled Rachel warily, low growl rumbling, eyes darting between her and Ellie. Rachel crouched, careful, not looking the dog in the eye. "I know what it's like to lose someone," she said, her voice trembling just a bit. "Grief makes us strange, makes us build walls. But dogs, they don't let you hide forever, do they?" Ellie, surprised by the honesty, found herself blinking back tears she hadn't expected. "He won't eat. He barely rests. I think he's waiting for her. For Laney." Rachel sat on the floor, the lemon bars untouched beside her. "Sometimes waiting is all you can do. Just sit with the pain." She didn't reach out at first, just let Ranger come to her in his own time. It took a full 10 minutes, but eventually, Ranger inched forward, nostrils flaring, backpack gripped in his teeth. Rachel didn't flinch. She only murmured, "You're safe here, buddy." When Ranger finally let her scratch behind his ears, Ellie felt a tiny crack in her own armor. She sat down on the rug, back pressed against the cold radiator, and let the silence settle. Rachel spoke in a hush. "You know, after my son died, I stopped going into his room. For years, I'd walk by, just to make sure the door was still closed. Like if I kept the memories locked in, I wouldn't lose anything else." She smiled sadly. "But grief gets loud, Ellie. You can't keep it out forever." Ellie nodded, her throat thick. "I see her in everything. I thought it would fade, but—" She looked at Ranger, now gently nudging Rachel's hand for more affection. "I think that's why I couldn't leave him out there. I couldn't stand the thought of another child, another mother, losing hope." A hush fell over them. Outside, the wind rattled the porch swing. Ranger perked up, moving to the front door, then back to the window, as if expecting someone. He whined, pacing, ears flat, the backpack clutched tight. Ellie watched, questions gnawing at her. Was Lainey still alive? Was she waiting for help that might never come? And if she was out there, how could Ellie possibly find her in time? Rachel, reading Ellie's face, squeezed her shoulder. Don't blame yourself for what you can't change. Just do what you can with what you have. She nodded toward Ranger. He hasn't given up. Maybe that's your answer. As dusk deepened, Ellie went to the bedroom and pulled an old Afghan from the closet, the same one her daughter used to drag down the hall for movie nights. She spread it on the living room floor. Ranger immediately claimed it, curling up with the backpack pressed to his chest. He let out a sigh, the first real sound of comfort she'd heard from him. Rachel prepared tea, moving quietly, and set a mug in front of Ellie. You're not alone, you know. Not really. None of us are, even if it feels that way sometimes. Her words lingered, both a comfort and a challenge. As night fell, Ellie turned on the porch light. She watched Ranger, his restlessness, the way he watched the door, the street beyond, every shadow. She wondered about Lainey, her scribbled pleas, the terror in her drawings. Could Ranger really show her the way? Or was hope itself the only thing keeping them moving forward? As Rachel left, she knelt beside Ranger one last time. You take care of her, she whispered, meaning both Ellie and Lainey. Ranger licked her hand, a low, grateful rumble in his chest. It was the beginning of trust, fragile but real. That night, as Ellie drifted into uneasy sleep, the pink backpack sat on the floor between her and Ranger. A small, battered thing, full of secrets, pain, and maybe the smallest glimmer of a miracle. The house was still haunted by grief, but in the darkness, two survivors lay side by side, holding fast to hope and to each other. Dawn bled slowly through the skeletal branches outside Ellie's window, the snow-painted woods ghostly and silent. Ellie woke before her alarm, body tense with the ache of sleeplessness. The house was cold, her daughter's old Afghan bundled around her shoulders. Across the living room, Ranger sat by the door, body rigid, backpack pinned beneath his paw, his gaze locked on Ellie with an intensity that prickled her skin. He whined, low and persistent. It wasn't hunger or pain, it was urgency, a sense that something, somewhere, was unfinished. Ellie's fingers hovered over her phone, the instinct to call dispatch warring with something deeper, an animal trust, fragile but undeniable, building between her and the battered shepherd. She moved to the window and saw fresh paw prints dotting the snow just outside. Ranger, despite injury, had been out in the night, searching, guarding. Ellie knelt beside him. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Ranger's ears flattened, tail tucked, but he pushed the backpack closer to her feet and gave a pleading, guttural whine. He wanted her to follow. It was reckless, maybe even dangerous, to step out without backup. Ellie's mind conjured every warning, her chief's voice echoing about proper channels, the memory of failed rescue attempts, the ache of personal loss. But looking into Ranger's eyes, she saw purpose, an unwavering demand for trust. She grabbed her boots, shrugged into her parka, and clipped Ranger's leash to his battered collar, though he hardly seemed to notice. His focus was somewhere else, beyond the walls, into the icy woods. The air was sharp, each breath stinging. Ranger moved with surprising resolve, limping through the drifts, pausing only to glance back, making sure Ellie followed. He led her beyond the last line of houses, into the tangled trees where the snow muffled all sound but their own. For a while the trek was wordless, the only music the crunch of boots and paws in the snow. Ellie's thoughts drifted between hope and fear. Was she chasing a miracle, or the ghost of one more child she couldn't save? Ranger pressed forward, undeterred, nose to the wind, moving with a memory that ran deeper than pain. Finally, he stopped at the base of an ancient oak, roots gnarled and half-buried. He pawed at the snow, whining urgently, claws scraping until Ellie knelt to help. Her fingers froze, but together, they unearthed a small tin box, its metal chilled to the bone. Ellie's hands shook as she pried it open. Inside, she found a photograph, creased, faded, but clear. Lainey, hair wild, arms flung around Ranger's neck, beaming at the camera. Behind them, just out of focus, stood a man. His face was obscured by shadow, but the shape of his jaw, the angle of his shoulders, felt menacing. Ellie's stomach dropped. Tucked beneath the photo was a crumpled note, smudged with dirt and fear. In a child's hand it read, "If something happens, Ranger will show you." And almost hidden beneath that, a USB drive wrapped in a pink hair tie. Ellie's breath caught. Evidence. Maybe even a lifeline. She glanced at Ranger, whose eyes pleaded with her to understand. "You did good, boy," she said softly. Her mind raced. If this was what Laney had left behind, what else was out there? Could this be the clue that would finally unmask the man in the shadows? For a moment, Ellie's own memories flooded back. The endless interviews after her daughter vanished, the way every piece of evidence seemed to dissolve in the hands of people who doubted her, the loneliness of not being believed. Now, with Ranger at her side, she faced the same dilemma. Bring what she'd found to the station or hold on to it, risk everything by following her own instincts. She could already hear her chief's voice. "Don't go off the books, Parker. Let the system do its job." But Ellie knew the system didn't always work. Not for kids like Laney, not for mothers like her. Her fingers trembled as she pocketed the photo and USB. Ranger nudged her, leaning against her knee, a silent offer of comfort and camaraderie. Together, they trudged back toward the house, the evidence burning a hole in Ellie's pocket. Inside, as she cleaned Ranger's paws and tended his wounds, Ellie examined the photograph under the kitchen light. She compared the man's silhouette to names and faces from the case files. She tried the USB in her laptop, password protected, of course, but that was a puzzle for later. For now, she documented everything, emailed digital copies to her private cloud, and stashed the originals in her gun safe. The day stretched on, slow and heavy. Ranger grew restless, pacing the rooms, glancing at the door. Ellie's mind spun with possibilities. What if she brought all this to the chief and got shut down, evidence lost, leads buried? What if going alone meant risking everything? A text from Rachel broke her reverie. "Heard you were out in the woods with the dog. You okay?" Ellie stared at the screen. She thought of Rachel's kindness, of her warnings about the town, and about trust. Maybe she didn't have to carry all of this alone. As dusk fell, Ellie sat beside Ranger on the living room floor, the pink backpack between them. She looked at the dog, scarred, unyielding, and more loyal than anyone she'd ever known. He'd led her to a clue, a hope, a new way forward. Ellie made her decision, voice barely above a whisper. "We do this together, Ranger." No more hiding, no more waiting. Ranger rested his head on her lap, sighing, as if he understood that a new chapter had just begun, for both of them. The hum of fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Ellie stepped into the police station, her boots shedding clumps of icy slush onto the worn linoleum. The place felt different, colder, the air thick with skepticism and rumor. Eyes trailed her as she passed the front desk, some curious, some wary, a few whispered behind their hands. Word had spread fast in this town, and Ellie knew better than to expect warmth from her fellow officers, especially when she was on a case that stung so close to home. Clutching the USB drive and the photo she'd unearthed with Ranger, Ellie ducked into the evidence room and locked the door behind her. She exhaled slowly, letting the silence settle before plugging the USB into her laptop, heart pounding in her chest. Password prompt. She hesitated, then tried the name she'd seen scrawled through Laney's journal entries. Ranger. The drive unlocked with a mechanical chime. There were 5 video files, each labeled by date. Ellie's hands shook as she clicked the first one. A grainy clip flickered to life. A cramped, dingy living room, a child's voice whimpering. The camera was angled low. Laney, barely visible, crouched in the corner, clutching Ranger to her chest. A man's voice barked in the background. Rage, threats, the edge of violence in every syllable. The camera shook as he yanked Laney away, but Ranger lunged, teeth bared, barking with wild desperation. The man kicked the dog aside, swearing. The video ended abruptly. Ellie swallowed hard and watched the rest. Each file was a fresh wound, Lainey pleading for her dog, Ranger blocking the blows meant for her, the man, now clearly identifiable as Derek Morrison, taunting the child, leaving her alone in a locked room for hours on end. The last video showed Lainey hiding in a closet, whispering, "If I don't make it out, Ranger will find someone to help. Please, don't let him hurt my friend." Ellie felt her own trauma vibrating in her bones. The system had failed. Again. A knock on the evidence room door startled her. "Ellie, you in there?" It was Deputy Jensen, voice muffled by the heavy door. "Chief wants to see you, now." Ellie wiped her face, closed the laptop and shoved the USB into her pocket. She squared her shoulders and left the room, ignoring the stares. The chief sat behind his desk, jaw clenched, eyes hard. "You went off script, Parker, again. And now we have half the town in an uproar about some stray dog and a missing kid that might not even exist." Ellie didn't flinch. "Lainey exists. I have proof, and I know who's responsible." The chief's gaze narrowed. "You realize what you're accusing Derek Morrison of? His family practically runs this county. Don't get yourself burned for a lost cause." Ellie slid the photo across the desk. "He's not just hurting Lainey. He's covering his tracks. There are others." She held back the video evidence for now, a surge of self-preservation kicking in. The chief grunted, pushing the photo back. "Bring me more than a story and a picture. Otherwise, this goes nowhere." Ellie stormed out, anger burning in her gut. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She answered, cautious. "Officer Parker." A whisper on the line. "It's Jonah Greer, the disgraced social worker. I saw what happened to Lainey, and I have files. Proof of what Derek's done. He's not working alone. Meet me tonight, Old Train Depot. Don't trust anyone else." The line went dead. Ellie's mind raced. More evidence, more danger, and a growing sense of isolation. Back at home, dusk was falling. Rachel came by, dropping off groceries, her eyes tired but alert. "You okay?" she asked softly. Ellie shook her head. "They're warning me off the case. People are scared. But I'm not quitting, Rachel. Not now." As they talked, Rachel checked her phone. "Ellie, you should see this." She showed Ellie security footage from the previous night. Ranger, outside Rachel's house, standing sentinel over the pink backpack, pacing the porch as if guarding it with his life. At one point, a shadowy figure approached from the edge of the yard. Ranger bristled, barked, drove the figure back into the darkness. Ellie leaned in, heart thundering. "He's trying to protect something. Maybe he's trying to lead us somewhere." Rachel nodded. "That dog isn't just loyal, Ellie. He's a witness." Later that night, as Ellie prepped for her secret meeting, she reviewed the videos again, searching for any missed clues. She noticed something in the last video. A faint outline of a map on the wall behind Lainey, marked with tiny red dots. She took a screenshot, heart racing. Could that be where Derek kept his victims? Where Lainey might still be? The threat was growing. Veiled warnings arrived via text. An anonymous note left on her windshield. "Let it go, or you'll regret it." Ellie kept going. With Ranger at her side, Ellie tucked the backpack close and left the house, determination hardening every step. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one brewing in town. The truth was out there now, digital, undeniable, and ready to blow the case wide open. But so was the danger. Ellie knew, as she disappeared into the swirling snow, that someone was watching. And she'd have to risk everything to save Lainey, bring Derek to justice, and keep Ranger, her only ally, safe. The wind howled through the empty Wyoming fields as Ellie steered her SUV onto a lonely, half-frozen dirt road. Her nerves snapped taut with every mile, the headlights carving shaky tunnels through the spring-thaw fog. She checked her mirrors every few minutes, expecting headlights that never appeared. Ranger dozed uneasily in the back seat, the pink backpack pressed beneath his chin, a soldier guarding the flag of a missing child. Jonah Greer had chosen the meeting spot for a reason. The old train depot sat hunched at the edge of nowhere, its windows dark, graffiti scrawled across the warped planks. Ellie killed the engine and listened to her pulse thrum in her ears. She reached for her sidearm, then hesitated. What she needed tonight wasn't force, but truth. If there was a chance Lainey was alive, she had to risk everything. Inside, Jonah was already waiting, nervous and hollow-eyed, cradling a battered laptop. He flinched when Ranger growled low, but Ellie raised a hand. "It's okay. He's with me." Jonah slid a battered thumb drive across the table. You need to understand, Ellie. Derek's family. They've paid off cops, judges, caseworkers. I tried to blow the whistle after the first girl went missing, but they made sure I disappeared instead. His hand shook. Lainey isn't the first. She won't be the last. Ellie's breath caught as she plugged the drive into her own laptop. Names, case files, audio recordings, dozens of redacted reports, every victim's story ending with no further action. It was a pattern. The girls, the dog attacks, the mysterious disappearances. "You're sure all this is legit?" she whispered, scanning the files. Jonah nodded. "I copied everything before they fired me. The system doesn't want to see the truth, but it's all there." His gaze shifted to Ranger. He protected them all. Derek always hated that dog. Ellie clenched her jaw, anger and guilt swirling together. "I'm not letting him get away again." She copied the files, backing them up 3 ways: USB, encrypted email, private cloud, insurance in case things went bad. Jonah handed her a slip of paper, hand-scribbled directions. "This is where Derek keeps the others. Abandoned property north of the state line. If Lainey's alive, she'll be there. But be careful. Derek's got friends who'll do anything to keep secrets buried." Ellie thanked him, then hustled Ranger out into the night. As she drove home, she rehearsed what she'd say to the chief, to the judge, to anyone who'd listen. But she already knew. Trust was in short supply, and time was even shorter. As they neared home, Ranger's ears pricked, and he pressed his nose to the window, growling softly. Ellie slowed, heart pounding, and saw it. A flicker of light in the darkness, movement near her porch. She parked down the block and crept through the shadows, hand on her sidearm, Ranger at her side. The air reeked of gasoline. Someone crouched by her front steps, lighter in hand. Ellie shouted, drawing her weapon. The figure bolted, dropping the can and vanishing into the night. Ranger lunged after him, barking with a fury Ellie had never heard before. She managed to grab Ranger's collar, heart slamming against her ribs. "It's okay, boy. You did good." She stamped out the spreading pool of gas with trembling feet, coughing as fumes choked her throat. If she'd arrived just a few minutes later, her house and all the evidence inside would have gone up in flames. Someone was desperate. Someone was scared. The next morning, news of the attempted arson spread like wildfire. Some neighbors offered sympathy. Others shut their doors tighter. At the station, Ellie's chief barely looked at her. "You're making enemies, Parker. Maybe it's time to let this one go." Ellie glared back. "Not happening." That afternoon, she met Rachel at the park, Ranger trotting beside her, his limp pronounced but determined. Rachel listened as Ellie recounted the night's events, the backup files, the threats. "You know what you're risking?" Rachel asked quietly. Ellie nodded. "If I stop, nothing changes. If I don't, I might lose everything." "But so might Lainey. So might the next girl." Rachel squeezed her shoulder. "Then I'm with you. Whatever you need." Word got out. The town split down the middle. Some folks rallied behind Ellie. Others muttered about stirring up trouble, too afraid or too comfortable to act. Ranger became both hero and target, his presence a constant reminder of secrets best left buried. But Ellie pressed on. She coordinated with the state police, using Jonah's map and the clues from the videos. Every hour mattered. Derek's truck had vanished from his driveway, his phone disconnected. He was on the move. One night, exhausted and desperate, Ellie fell asleep on the couch with Ranger and the pink backpack. In a dream, she saw her daughter's face, not as a ghost, but as a beacon. When she woke, Ranger was staring at her, tail thumping softly, a silent signal. Don't give up. The final call came at dawn, a tip that Derek's truck was spotted near the Wyoming property. Ellie geared up, her badge heavy on her chest, and set out. She checked her phone, back up on the way but hours behind. Ranger jumped into the back seat, eyes bright, scars gleaming in the morning sun. The race was on. Lainey's life and the future of every lost child hung in the balance. The courthouse buzzed with an energy that was almost electric, part fear, part hope, and pure anticipation. News of Ellie Parker's case had rippled far beyond their small Colorado town. By the time she pulled into the parking lot that stormy morning, the steps were crowded with reporters, protesters, and a heavy police presence. Camera crews jostled for space, their lenses sweeping over the crowd and, most notably, over Ranger, who walked calmly at Ellie's side, his scars barely hidden beneath his fresh grooming and badge-shaped collar. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Townsfolk filled every seat. Some came out of curiosity, others out of outrage or loyalty. The bailiff called order as Derek Morrison entered, his expensive suit and smug confidence barely masking a simmering anger. He scanned the crowd, eyes settling on Ellie and Ranger, and smirked. Derek's lawyer, already hunched over a pile of folders, whispered frantically, but Derek didn't seem worried. He'd slipped through the cracks so many times, why would today be any different? Ellie sat at the prosecution table, the pink backpack, now evidence, placed beside her. Ranger, sensing her nerves, rested his head on her foot, eyes fixed on Derek. Rachel slipped in behind Ellie, giving her a reassuring nod, while Jonah Greer, pale but resolute, sat ready to testify. And in the front row, a small girl named Mia fidgeted, flanked by a social worker. Mia hadn't spoken in months, not since her own time in Derek's care. The trial began. The judge's gavel hammered. The DA laid out the evidence, video files from the USB drive, Laney's journal, Rachel's security footage, Jonah's case files. For the first time, the community saw the depth of Derek's cruelty, psychological abuse, intimidation, physical violence, cover-ups. Each video played to a silent room. In one, Derek's face appeared full frame, unmistakable as he hurled threats and locked Laney in a dark room. Ranger, battered and bleeding, never left her side. Derek's defense was fierce. His lawyer dismissed everything as misunderstandings, accusing Ellie and Jonah of vendettas, suggesting Ranger had been trained to attack as part of a setup. The lawyer pushed hard. "Isn't it true, Officer Parker, that your judgment's been compromised by personal tragedy? Isn't it possible you're projecting your pain onto this case?" Ellie's hands shook, but her voice was steady. "No, I'm not the one who hurt these kids. Derek Morrison did." Jonah took the stand, recounting the trail of ignored warnings and doctored reports. The judge listened, the jury watched, the town held its breath, but the room's turning point came when the DA called Mia to the stand. The girl climbed the steps, clutching a plush dog toy. She wouldn't meet Derek's eyes. Her social worker, kneeling, whispered, "You're safe. You can do this." Mia's testimony was supposed to be brief. Instead, when shown a photo of Ranger in the pink backpack, she suddenly found her voice, a trembling whisper at first, but growing as the courtroom leaned in. Ranger. He stayed with me. When Derek yelled, Ranger barked. He protected us. He was scared, but he stayed." The room was dead silent. Derek sneered, "That dog's just an animal. He doesn't know anything." And then, for the first time during the trial, Ranger barked, sharp, loud, as if in protest. His tail bristled and every head in the courtroom snapped his way. For a heartbeat, even Derek looked afraid. Mia smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He's not just a dog. He's my hero." Ellie saw the tide shift. Jury members exchanging glances, townsfolk dabbing at their eyes, the DA's jaw set with new resolve. Even the judge softened. "That's enough, Mr. Morrison," he warned. In the closing arguments, the DA hammered home the truth. This case is about more than one little girl or one brave dog. It's about the courage to stand up for those who can't fight for themselves. After hours of deliberation, the verdict was clear: guilty on all counts. The judge, voice grave, stripped Derek of all parental and animal custody rights and ordered him held pending further criminal charges. Ellie was granted permanent custody of Ranger. The court issued a warrant for any further accomplices revealed in Jonah's files. The gallery erupted, some people shouting in anger, but many more cheering, hugging, and weeping. Reporters swarmed the hallways, microphones thrust forward for statements. Rachel wrapped Ellie in a fierce hug. "You did it," she whispered. "You brought him down." As Ellie left the courtroom, Ranger at her side, a crowd formed around them, not in suspicion, but in gratitude. For the first time in years, Ellie felt the burden lift, even just a little. She looked down at Ranger, whose eyes shone with quiet pride. The storm outside had cleared, replaced by sunlight glinting off the courthouse steps. But the real healing, she knew, was only beginning. Spring swept in with a gentle promise, sunlight warming the porch and washing the Parker house in gold. The icy silence of winter had thawed, inside and out. Ellie's home, once thick with the shadows of grief, now pulsed with a new kind of life. It started with small things, the smell of cinnamon toast in the morning, Ranger's paws tapping softly across the floor, the sound of laughter floating in through open windows. Mia had been living with Ellie for nearly a month. When she first arrived, her steps were hesitant, her voice no more than a whisper, her eyes always darting to the exits. She clung to the pink backpack, now adorned with stickers and patches, its tattered seams mended with bright thread. Ranger became her constant companion, sleeping by her bed, greeting her every morning with a wag and a gentle nudge. His scars faded beneath his thickening coat. The haunted look in his eyes slowly gave way to something softer. At breakfast, Mia quietly told Ellie about her dreams, ones where she and Lainey were running through sun-drenched fields, Ranger chasing butterflies, the bad man nowhere in sight. "It feels real," she'd say, tracing a smiley face on her toast with her finger. Ellie listened, her heart swelling and aching at the same time. Sometimes healing looked like hope disguised as a child's story. Rachel stopped by most afternoons, arms full of art supplies or homemade cookies. She and Ellie had started a support group in town, Guardian's Circle, for anyone who needed a safe space, survivors, foster families, and animal rescuers alike. Their first meeting was held in Ellie's living room. Mia and Ranger curled up together on the rug as adults and children, many of them strangers, spoke quietly about their scars, their fears, and their small, hard-won triumphs. Ranger moved among them, sensing who needed his company, lying beside trembling hands, his calm presence knitting the group together. Ellie took her new role as foster parent and advocate seriously. She'd never imagined her life would be filled with so many voices, loud, joyful, wounded, and healing. She enrolled Mia in school, driving her every morning with Ranger in the back seat, his nose pressed against the window. Mia made friends, her laughter ringing out on the playground, her silence replaced by the kind of chatter Ellie thought she might never hear again. Teachers marveled at Mia's transformation. She was still shy, still cautious, but she raised her hand in class, offered snacks at lunch, shared her story with those who listened. Ellie spent her nights helping other foster parents navigate paperwork, building bridges with animal shelters, and advocating for new laws to protect kids like Lainey and Mia. At every town hall meeting, she stood with Ranger at her side, his presence speaking louder than any words she could muster. He had become more than a symbol. He was a living reminder that loyalty and love could heal the deepest wounds. One afternoon, as Ellie and Rachel sat on the porch watching Mia and a few neighborhood kids play tag, Mia paused and waved. "Come play with us, Ranger," she called, her voice bright and confident. Ranger bounded off the porch, his tail high, chasing after the kids in wide, happy loops. The pink backpack, once a vessel of fear, now sat propped against the steps, bulging with colored pencils, friendship bracelets, and scraps of poetry Mia had written about hope. Ellie's heart twisted as she watched them. She remembered a time when her house was silent, her world shrunk to a single ache. Now the air was alive with noise and warmth. Rachel, sensing Ellie's thoughts, squeezed her hand. "You did this, Ellie. You opened the door. You let life back in." Ellie shook her head. "It wasn't just me. It was Ranger. And you and Mia. We all brought each other back." Rachel smiled, wiping a tear from her cheek. "That's how healing works. No one does it alone." As evening settled, the Guardian Circle met again, this time outside, beneath string lights in the backyard. Survivors shared stories, kids played under the trees, and Ranger wandered from lap to lap, soaking in gentle pats and kind words. Ellie listened, realizing the true power in these small gatherings, not just the sharing of pain, but the building of something beautiful from it. That night, as Ellie tucked Mia into bed, the girl wrapped her arms around Ranger's neck. "Thank you for finding me," Mia whispered. "I think I'm not scared anymore." Ellie watched as Ranger settled onto the rug, eyes closing in contentment. The scars, his and theirs, would never disappear. But in this house, they were no longer wounds. They were reminders of survival, courage, and the promise that no one had to face the darkness alone. As the moonlight spilled through the window, illuminating the pink backpack now overflowing with hope, Ellie realized she had finally found a new beginning, not just for Mia, not just for Ranger, but for herself, and for everyone brave enough to believe that healing, though slow, is always possible. Spring sunlight poured into Ellie's kitchen, a gentle warmth settling over the battered wooden table, and the familiar chaos of a home reclaimed from grief. The pink backpack, now layered with patches and bright marker drawings, sat in the center, surrounded by stacks of homework, mugs of half-drunk cocoa, and Ranger's well-chewed tennis ball. Life had finally found a way back in. Yet on this bright Saturday morning, a quietness filled the air, a moment of stillness that made old wounds ache just a little. Ellie sipped her coffee and watched Mia lean against Ranger on the sun-drenched floor, quietly braiding friendship bracelets. Ranger's tail thumped softly, his breathing slow and content. The house, once silent and haunted, felt full of gentle reminders, laughter echoing down the hall, muddy sneakers by the door, the low hum of voices and healing. Ellie looked out the window at the backyard, tree branches waving, sunlight glinting off the string lights left over from their last guardian's circle. She felt the weight and wonder of everything that had brought her to this point. Losing her own daughter had nearly destroyed her. For years, she'd lived like a ghost, locking up her heart, shutting out the world so the pain wouldn't break her. She'd convinced herself that scars, hers and others, were shameful things to be hidden away. But Ranger had changed that. The battered shepherd, with his haunted eyes and stubborn loyalty, had shown her something Ellie had tried so hard to forget. Sometimes, the things that break us are the very things that make us strong enough to help someone else. Sometimes scars aren't just reminders of what was lost, they're proof we survived. They are the beginnings of courage. She watched Mia now, marveling at how the girl had blossomed. Mia's transformation wasn't perfect. There were still bad nights, shadowed mornings, moments when the world seemed too loud and memories cut too close. Sometimes Ellie would wake to hear Mia crying out. Ranger already pressed close, offering silent comfort. But even these setbacks had a different shape now. They were no longer pits to fall into, but obstacles to climb, together. Ellie had learned to let herself be honest with Mia, about pain, about fear, about what it meant to keep going when you'd rather run away. Their little home had become a refuge, not just for Mia, but for others too. Children who came to Guardian's circle with shy, searching eyes. Parents desperate for hope. Survivors with stories too raw for words. Each time Ellie opened the door to someone else's hurt, her own heart healed a little more. One afternoon, as she folded laundry, Ellie found Mia's latest poem tucked in the backpack. In wobbly letters it read, "Scars are stories. Scars are friends. Scars mean we are still here. We're not the end." Ellie's eyes burned. She pinned the poem to the fridge, proud and a little awed. Sometimes, when old ghosts pressed in, the memory of her daughter's laughter, or the emptiness of the years she'd lost, Ellie would find Ranger sitting at her side, eyes patient and deep. He never judged her grief. He just stayed. That silent, steadfast love was a gift she'd never expected to find again. The lessons of the last months ran deep, that the system could fail, and often did. That real change, real justice, didn't come from policies or paperwork alone, but from ordinary people choosing over and over to show up. That healing didn't mean forgetting or moving on. It meant building new things atop the brokenness, refusing to let fear or shame decide what the future would be. Rachel's support group had grown, with more families and animal advocates coming every week. Mia became a beacon for newcomers, shyly handing out stickers or reading her poems. Ranger, now a local legend, would nuzzle up to anyone who needed reassurance, his presence speaking volumes where words couldn't. That evening, Ellie tucked Mia into bed. Mia looked up, serious for a moment, and whispered, "You know, I didn't want to be found. Not at first. But you and Ranger, you didn't give up on me. Now when I'm scared, I remember that even broken things can be beautiful again." Ellie brushed Mia's hair off her forehead, her voice steady. "We're all a little broken. That's why we fit together." Downstairs, she found Ranger watching the door, always vigilant. She sat beside him, stroking his scarred head. "We did it, boy. Not just for Lainey, or Mia, or even for me. We did it for everyone who needs a second chance." Outside, the town was quiet, but inside their home, the scars, once hidden, had become badges of courage. And Ellie understood, maybe for the first time, that what we leave behind isn't just pain, but also hope. That every act of loyalty, every moment of kindness, every stubborn refusal to walk away, it all matters. It's how healing starts and how it endures. As night settled over the Parker house, Ranger curled at Ellie's feet, Mia's soft breathing carrying through the walls. The scars remained, but so did the love. Together, they were more than the sum of what had been lost. They were proof that in this home, hope had not only survived, but thrived. Spring's arrival in the mountain town brought with it an air of celebration and renewal. The cold memories of winter softened beneath flowering dogwoods and gentle sun. For the first time in years, the annual festival was more than just a day on the calendar. It was a testament to what the town had survived and what it had chosen to become. This year, a new banner fluttered above the courthouse steps, honoring survivors, celebrating courage. The words seemed to glow as if the whole town had decided to finally let the light in. Ellie walked through the crowd, Ranger at her side, and Mia's hand warm in hers. The courthouse lawn was a riot of color and movement, children darting between booths, laughter and music mingling with the sizzle of barbecue and the scent of blooming lilacs. Ellie could feel eyes on her, some familiar, some new, all changed by the story that had unfolded through the long winter. At the heart of it all, the pink backpack, once a symbol of fear, now stuffed with art supplies and tiny gifts, sat in a place of honor beside the main stage. Ranger watched over it, his fur brushed to a golden sheen, a shiny new collar with a brass medallion catching the sun. Mia, shy but determined, wore her favorite blue dress and carried a poem in her pocket, her eyes sparkling with a kind of peace Ellie had never dared hope for. The mayor, an old friend of Rachel's, took the stage and quieted the crowd. She spoke of hard years and harder choices, of the ways a town is tested, not just by tragedy, but by its response to those left hurting. Then she called Ellie, Mia, and Ranger up to join her. Applause broke out, genuine and long, the kind that shakes old wounds loose and replaces them with something cleaner. Ellie knelt to clip the new collar onto Ranger. The mayor slipped a medal around his neck, reading from the inscription, "For loyalty, courage, and unwavering hope." Children rushed to hug him, their laughter ringing across the square. Ranger sat tall, accepting every pat and squeal with gentle patience, his gaze sweeping over the crowd as if he understood exactly what today meant. It was Mia's turn to speak. She stepped to the microphone, voice trembling at first, then clear as she read her poem. "When I was lost, you found me. When I was scared, you stayed. We don't need to be unbroken. Just together, we are brave." Tears streamed down Rachel's cheeks. Ellie swallowed hard, holding Mia close, her heart both full and aching. It was the end of something, and the beginning of something new. Reporters swarmed, hungry for sound bites, but Ellie chose her words carefully when asked what she'd learned. It's not about being heroes. It's about refusing to give up on each other. Sometimes saving one life changes the whole world. That's enough. The festival carried on. Games, music, food, new friendships kindling beneath the old oaks. The Guardians Circle hosted a table where survivors wrote notes of encouragement and tied them to a tree of hope, its branches soon heavy with colored ribbons. Ranger lay beneath the tree, children gathered around, reading to him or simply sitting in comfortable silence. Parents traded stories of hardship and healing, and the town's boundaries seemed for a little while to blur, hurt and hope side by side. As the day faded to dusk, Ellie and Rachel sat together on the courthouse steps, watching Mia and her friends play tag beneath the strings of lanterns. "We made it," Rachel said softly, "through all of it." Ellie nodded. "It doesn't feel like an ending, does it?" "No," Rachel replied. "More like the middle of something better." Ellie looked around, at the kids laughing, the adults sharing food and gentle words, the pink backpack, no longer haunted by fear but bursting with life. She remembered how small her world had once become, how grief had nearly drowned her, yet she'd chosen to stay, to keep listening and loving and risking, even when it hurt. That was the lesson, the power of staying. Not fixing everything, not erasing the scars, but being present, holding space, letting healing bloom in the cracks. When the crowd grew quiet, Ellie found herself on stage again, this time with Mia beside her, Ranger at her feet. The festival's final tradition was a call to action, a chance for every voice to join in hope. Ellie took a deep breath and spoke to the crowd, her words shaped by all she'd lived through. If you see someone hurting, don't turn away. If you hear a voice crying out, listen. If you find someone lost, be the person who doesn't give up. That's how we make a difference, not all at once, but one moment, one choice, one act of love at a time. The audience, moved to stillness, broke into applause, warm, sincere, and unifying. As the sun set behind the mountains, Ellie felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She sat with Mia and Ranger beneath the blooming trees, Ranger's head resting on Mia's knee, his eyes closed in quiet contentment. The pain of the past was not erased, but here, now, it had been transformed, woven into something beautiful and lasting. The legacy of Lainey, of every lost child, and of every survivor lived on in the courage of a community that refused to look away. And as the first stars pricked the evening sky, Ellie whispered to herself, and to anyone listening, hope doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's just staying. Sometimes it's loving even when you're afraid. That's enough. Ranger let out a soft sigh. The past would always be a part of them, but so would the future. In this town, in this family, the story wasn't about what had been lost, but about what had been found, and the choice to keep going together.